Dajahal, hi guys, it's Janae and welcome back to my channel, and today I am finishing my read along for Faraway Wanderers. I can't believe we're here. It feels kind of insane because we started this 2 years ago. It's really been 2 years already. I can't believe it. But yeah, it's insane. We're here. Hi. Oh, hello from Seattle. Oh my word. Okay. Hi. So yeah, it's kind of mind-blowing to think that that is the case, but I am, even though I'm kind of sad to see it be the last one, I'm also really excited to see how this ends. Just let me know if the audio is okay. I tested it. It should be fine, but confirmation is always appreciated. And yeah, I'm gonna give it like 4 minutes so we can start at 5 past. I'm trying to do this on time thing. We're gonna see how long that lasts. But I think I'm getting the hang of the live streams. I really hope. Hi Sabrina, how are you? Okay, I'm excited. I'm excited. Okay, the audio is good. Yay! That is good news. I feel like hopefully, I don't want to jinx it. Hopefully, this means that I'm getting the hang of things. So yeah, as I said, we're gonna give it like 3 more minutes. Tell me how your week has been. Mine has been slightly chaotic, but I put up a schedule for this week, and I'm hoping that I'll be able to stick to it. We shall see, unless things go wrong, like things so often tend to do. Hello from Romania, my soul. It's insane, like, to think that we're like communicating with people from, I don't want to say all over the world. It sounds very fancy, but still, it's pretty cool. Practice makes progress. Yes, exactly. So yeah, I don't know. We shall see how it goes. So as I mentioned, I'm just gonna say it again for anyone who wasn't in yesterday's stream. So we're finishing today with this. Then I'm gonna take the next weekend off, and then the weekend after that we shall be starting with Urha. I am so excited. Kikter has been like hounding me, wanting to know when I'm gonna start reading Urha, because I think she just wants someone to talk to about it, which fair enough. That is me with most things that I love. So hi. Social media can sometimes make connecting magic. Yeah, exactly. I mean, that is the joys of YouTube and other social medias. That's why I started a channel, so that I had people to freak out with about things that I enjoy. So I'm so glad that people found me, and it worked out. Yes, I'm very intrigued to see how I'm gonna be handling the swearing, because I don't swear in my everyday life. And I'm not necessarily planning on starting. So I don't know. It's gonna be an interesting time trying to figure out how to circumnavigate the swearing. We shall see what I decide to do, and also apparently there's quite some intense scenes that I am very nervous about. I just really hope none of my family watch my channel. I've been in the fandom for close to 2 decades now, and the thing I love about it is the way it can connect people from all over the world. Make a beep. I shall have a beep counter with me. I don't know how that would work live, but we shall. Yeah, okay, I can just beep. I can just say beep. That's gonna be interesting. Okay, now that I have spoken way too much already, it's 5 past, so I think we should just get started because we have quite a few chapters to cover, and from what I've investigated, it doesn't seem like the extras are particularly shorter than the normal chapters, so it's gonna take a while. Okay. Oh goodness, I'm gonna sound like an alien by the end of it. Um, okay, let us get started.
Faraway Wanderers, Chapter 77.
Okay, hold on. Before we do get started, I want to ask because it seems like okay, we shall do a poll on what I should do instead of cursing. Um, I just want to ask because it seems like there's a fair few more people here than generally. So is this a better time for me to do live, like 8 to 10 at my time instead of what I've been doing, which was like 3-ish hours earlier than this time? Um, I can't stay to the live like the other 4. I'm behind, but life has been really testing me lately. I just came to say hi, and wish you the best, and see you on the next live. No problem. I really hope that life starts calming down for you a little bit, so that you can start feeling like a human again. And thank you so much for checking in. I'm a school teacher in real life. I have lots of swear alternatives. I can imagine you get creative with a teaching job.
Finale, Part 3.
Okay.
In
Are we
spite
ready?
of Wunkexing's tragic, powerless appearance, the scorpion still stood 2 jang apart from him, beaming and clucking his tongue. How unexpected, how unexpected. Wunkexing was still able to force out a smile. What's unexpected? He asked lightly. The scorpion shook his head. Ghostmaster, no matter how impressive and capable one is, when they fall into such a plight, who can say how the ways of the world go for certain? The other sucked in a breath that only seemed to reach his chest, making his answer very feeble. How wrong you are, Brother Scorpion. I've been the Ghostmaster for 8 years, yet had never had one day of peaceful sleep. What's so impressive here? The scorpion pondered this, then nodded. You're right. People like us don't get the happy, worry-free lives that common folk do. Looking
Ain't
at
that
this
the truth?
extraordinary, uncommon man, Wunkexing smiled. I dare not compare myself to your world-encompassing ability, Brother Scorpion.
Oh goodness.
Me being unable to sleep well was only because I was afraid that someone else would kill me. Now, there's finally no need for me to be scared anymore.
Oh my soul, if that isn't the most depressing thought I've ever heard. Like, oh, now I can rest easy because I'm dying anyway. Damn. One of my favorites is farts. The earlier time is good for Saturdays, on Sundays, whatever works. Okay, we shall figure it out. Yeah, no, my things that I use in place of swearing can get pretty strange. Like if instead of calling people like idiots, I sometimes refer to them as pawpaws. But it's a very affectionate thing. It's not I don't go around calling people idiots. It's more like if my dad does something like stub his toe, it's like, oh, you pawpaw. But anyway, why did I just admit to that?
That's true, the scorpion said with a nod.
Anyway.
You're about to die, so there's naturally no need for you to fear death. Lao Meng, you killed him? Wunkexing suddenly asked. The man laughed mockingly. If I didn't kill him, wouldn't I just be waiting around for him to kill me first then? That was your devoted old servant, Ghostmaster, but he still wholeheartedly wanted you to die.
Mm-hmm.
Why trouble yourself with keeping him on your mind? Wunkexing nodded at that. How many are left alive in the valley? The scorpion felt that this guy had way too many hang-ups, but replied anyways. Do you need to ask?
Way too many
Zhao got rid of half,
word.
and the remaining half of the injured ranks inevitably fell into my hands. How unthinkable of you to be so magnanimous. You have no time to look after yourself, yet are still worried about the lives and deaths of the valley's people? Out of successive generations of Ghostmasters, you really are the most affectionate and loyal one. Wunkashing silently laughed. His expression was somewhat bizarre, but he still sounded calm. Evil ghosts on the verge of death are still ghosts. They likely weren't easy to deal with. There are those amongst my men that are suicide warriors, the Scorpion answered, not concerned in the least. A couple hundred of them dying isn't much, nor do I care.
I don't
Okay,
like that.
Wunkashing said, shutting his eyes. You're very driven and bold in style. Brother Scorpion, you deserve to be the formidable figure of a generation. Ah, Lo Meng, the most tragic thing about him is none other than the fact that despite clearly being on the board, he still believed himself to be the one holding the pawns. Laughable,
That's
isn't
true.
it? His lips could
Makes
barely be
sense.
seen to move on those last few words, which were almost difficult to hear. Seeing this, the Scorpion looked to be reassured, and he stepped forward a bit. Of course, you're someone that's open-minded, Ghostmaster. Hand me your hook. As soon as he put his hand out, someone placed a weapon onto it. He restrained his grin as he looked at Wunkashing, who was leaning against a tree and already finding it challenging to move. Someone like you should be done in by my hands. Using another for this would be rather rude. While he spoke, he raised the hook horizontally across his chest, then slowly came forwards. Please go on ahead to Yellow Spring Road, Ghostmaster. He then raised the hook up.
Is the Yellow Spring Road supposed to be like a reference to the underworld or something like that? Because I'm just thinking of the Yellow Brick Road from The Wizard of Oz, which I don't think is the intention. So, yay, hi Vivi. What time zone are you streaming from? I'm taking a guess that you're somewhere in the UK. I appreciate the unintentional compliment that I sound at all British, because I'm streaming from South Africa. So yeah, our time zone is 2 hours ahead of GMT. So if that helps anyone.
Wunkashing opened his pitch-black eyes, gazing at him calmly. There looked to be pools of stagnant water inside them. It was like the one that was going to die was not him. All of a sudden, the Scorpion felt a strong gale attacking him from the side. Its intent to kill was much too prominent, and all of his hairs were made to stand on end from the murderous aura. With a loud shout, he hefted the hook even higher to obstruct it. The new arrival was a black-clothed man dressed as a poisonous scorpion, yet with no mask, and the flexible sword he held dodged past the hook.
Kind of salty that Joshua didn't just murder this man, but okay. Machine going to Oz. That would be a murderous story, though. I mean, the original novel is quite grim in and of itself. South Africa is even more fascinating. Okay, if you think so, that's good. On the same time zone as your. What other areas on our time zone? I think we're one of the few places where it doesn't matter where in South Africa you are, we all conform to the same time zone. Not saying that you're in South Africa, it's a strange thing that even though technically in some areas of South Africa you're supposed to be on a different time zone, we just conform to one time zone.
Unshakably wind around the Scorpion's arm. The man screamed as said arm was swept away, after which it fell clean away from him.
Oh!
The few poisonous scorpions behind him promptly and obediently came forth in reaction. All that was heard was a spell of clanging noises, and seen was an eye-dazzling display. In a wink's time, the dust settled, one stood alone, while several laid, and every one of the latter was missing their weapon-wielding arm, whether they were even alive or not.
Oh my word, him just like dispatching arms quicker than Langwanji. What the hell? Was this in the show? I don't remember people losing their arms in the show. Um, oh, you said Romania. Sorry, yes. Fair enough. I forgot that we like there's no clock shift when we visit Greece and so on,
Wunkashing
which
got
makes
a clear
sense.
view of the newcomer, only to sigh. Idiot, he whispered. Why did you come here? Joseshu shot him a glance out of the corner of his eye, smiling coldly. I came to collect your corpse, you loon. The great shaman's medicine had suppressed the
Oh
7
my
acupuncture
word.
nails, and Joseshu's skill was now reinstated to about 90% of its peak period. Even if he fought alone and out in the open, there was no way the scorpion would be his match, to say nothing of what he had just done being classified as a sneak attack.
Mm.
Jotsushu turned to him, the tip of his bai sword slightly hanging, voice slightly harsh. You dare act against whose mine? Wunkash
He said it. He said it. He like owned it. He said it with his whole chest. Damn. Okay. Kind of a little bit shook. Okay. And here I was like creating moments for myself because I was like, oh, I don't know why, but when he said, I came to collect your corpse, you loon, I read you love, and I was like, oh goodness, my brain is way ahead of them. But no, apparently not quite. I love that. Uh, your stream starts at 10 a.m. PST for the west coast of the States. Yeah, I'm sorry, it's very complicated. Like trying to find a time that's where I'm awake and the people in the United States are also awake.
stared blankly at the
Because a
back that was
large
blocking
part
his
of my audience is United States, obviously different time zones of the United States, but yeah.
sight. His fingers that were dangling down to the ground faintly began to tremble. The scorpion's complexion was paling from the pain, but he squeezed out a smile anyways. Ah, it's you, Brother Joe, he managed. I didn't know that you would be gracing us with your presence. My mistake.
Gracing
He
indeed.
looked eerily at the two, then waved his hand. An expert has arrived, so we won't be inviting ridicule for ourselves. For us, the lush mountains never change. The green waters flow forever. Retreat! The few still living scorpions scrambled up and swiftly followed after him as he drew back. Jotsushu didn't give chase, merely turning around to look at Wunkashing.
I don't like that. They should have gotten rid of him while they had the chance because they don't know how dangerous he would be if he were to come back. Time zones and hemispheres, indeed.
The latter's eyes flashed, but he smiled. You should still be careful about... Before he could finish, Jotsushu's pupils shrank. His body whirled around, and Baiyi turned into a pretty pattern of afterimages. It struck something with a ding, following which a muffled grunt came from the forest in black. He shook his head with a sigh. Using the same trick twice on the same person, do these scorpions do anything other than the same old stuff? From that alone, how are they on par with Four Seasons Manor at all?
Oh, feeling
Wunkashing stared at
defensive.
him for a minute, entranced, then began to smile, reaching a hand up high to grab the air. Jotsushu frowned. What are you doing? There's light around you, Wunkashing whispered. I'm catching it so I can see.
Oh,
Jotsushu
goodness. But that's interesting. That, I have to say, is a quote that I didn't think would be from the novel. That's a surprise. Um, Yeah, I think it's difficult because I feel like they kind of had to downplay it a little bit. I don't necessarily feel like it was downplayed in the show. I genuinely got that sense, but I think it's a very fine line to walk between someone who's like really good at martial arts, someone who is suffering because of you know something being wrong with his body at the moment, and also not having him be so overpowered that they can instantly solve all issues. Um, yeah, it's really cool. See,
He raised a brow slightly, crossing his arms in front of his chest. He leaned against the trunk of a big tree. Actually, Suifang isn't even around, is he? Mukashin kept grinning.
hmm?
He looked at his own fingers obsessively, then loosened them a little, as if something might leak out of his completely empty palm. His voice was still extremely quiet, and his breaths were like fine silk, as if they could be cut off at any time. You could tell.
Mm.
What about the real key? Lost, since I threw it off the top of the mountain.
Oh, just
Mukashin
casually
answered
mentioning that.
slowly, narrowing his eyes. Jotsushu nodded, suddenly not knowing how to react. With no key, there was no point in having the lapis armor, and everyone that had fought to the death on Fengya, ultimately fighting themselves into corpses, had not known unto death that what they were fighting over was actually just a pile of junk. It took me
But
3
isn't
years
that
to see.
the like that feels like such a statement in and of itself to how human nature tends to be? One of the extras is about the key. Oh, okay.
Secretly foster Sinding, Wangashing softly went on. How else could such a brain-dead moron be a rival to the hanging ghost and the ghost of impermanence? After that, you lured the hanging ghost into stealing the key when their fight was getting white hot. Wangashing laughed. I didn't have it, yet they all wanted it. 30 years ago, evil ghosts of all sizes began to long for their arsenal. The lapis armor belonged to the 5 major clans, while the ghosts weren't yet established, so they didn't dare to act too rashly, only able to get things going with the key, he explained in a whisper. Then he turned his head away and coughed twice, which brought some traces of blood out with them. He gently wiped them off of his face before continuing. Back in the
Like, pardon me while I'm dying. Let me just quickly cough it away, and then we can continue with our conversation. This man. This is the part where I'm like, you're really having the conversation while the man is dying. Yes, exactly. I mean, it's on par with the people who decide to kiss right before a bomb goes off, so I will let it slide. But it's not because it's not absolutely ridiculous.
day, Madame Wrong gave the key to my dad. They all thought that only 3 had been present then. Madame Wrong died, and Longtre safeguarded the secret to his grave. If things actually had been like that, the world would have been very peaceful, wouldn't it? There was a 4th? Joseph creased his brow, following which he had a quick realization. Was it Zhao Jing? He didn't have any real power back then, so since he was unable to talk about this with people from righteous sects, he secretly joined up with the Ghost Valley? Probably. They're all dead now in any case. Wangashing let out a cold laugh, remaining silent for a long time, before he took a deep breath. It's ridiculous that Madame Wrong and the rest never ended up telling my dad what exactly the key they gave him was, all for the sake of keeping their secret. He only saw it as something important that could never be thrown out, which was why he took my mom to hide out in a small mountain village for a full 10 years. Alas, on the year that I was 9, something unfortunate happened in that village. An owl. Enough, Jotsushu interrupted. After a minute of quiet, he softened his tone. That's enough. It's already been so many years. You don't need to.
I
My
mean,
parents believe
on the one hand, I get Joshu's sentiment, but on the other hand, let the man talk. Like if he's ready to and he wants to discuss this, let him get it out. Maybe it'll help him in some way.
that they were implicating the villagers. The other went on regardless. They wanted to fight until the bitter end and simply sent me away the night of. I wasn't worried and didn't know my own weight, so I snuck back. I saw. He sighed, slowly raising his head to gaze at the vague, dim sky. I saw my dad's body cut into two pieces. My mom was collapsed to the side. Her hair was in disarray. Her clothes weren't their original color anymore. Her face had been mutilated. Her nose had been cut off. The
Oh
outlines of
my
her
word, like is that necessary? I mean, is death necessary? No, not really. So I pointless question, never mind.
feature were
Okay.
unseeable, and a staff had pierced her through her chest and out her back, passing right under her shoulder blades. Do you know how I recognized her? Jotsushu watched him without a word.
Do I want to
I
know?
liked pretty people when I was young, and thought that my
No, 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 no. Let that not be the case. Please let his affinity for shoulder blades not be a trauma point. Oh my word. I mean, I don't have words. Like there's a lot to unpack in that. We're not gonna do it though, cause no. um, wasn't it in the show too? Maybe, but I don't remember it. It might have been mentioned while I was crying my eyes out, in which case I probably didn't pick up on it.
mom was the most beautiful person in the world. I liked to cling to her and tell her to carry me, so I got used to seeing her shoulder blades. Even when I die, I won't forget that. That's how the key landed in Ghost Valley's hands. But how did you... me? Wunkishing raised his brows, then suddenly started to laugh. The more he laughed, the louder he got, until a whimper-like noise finally came out of his throat. It was unclear whether he was actually laughing or sobbing. Me? I stumbled several times on my journey there, and came to look like a filthy mud monkey long before that. The second those evil ghosts noticed me, I believed that I was going to die, and stood there stupefied. One came over and grabbed me, but then I subconsciously bit him, making him yell and say, "It's a little lunatic." The people surrounding me laughed. One woman
Okay, hold on. I'm gonna play it, but yeah, I don't know what's coming, but just if you're sensitive, as I technically am, to vor, maybe just mute for the next little bit. I will put my hand up, and I will put my hand back down once it seems like it's over. Because I don't know what to expect, and I don't want anyone to be traumatized. So that would be good. Let me just see where we're at here. Okay. Oh, is this the oh, joy. Is this the cannibalism bit?
Then said
Fantastic.
that she wanted to peel my skin off to turn it into a human leather coat when she got back. I was horribly scared, so I thought up a solution. Jotsushu's throat bobbed slightly, brow slightly creased, yet he still said nothing. It had already gotten late in the day. There was utter silence all around. Wunkashin coughed a few more times, then continued. Right under all their watching eyes, I walked over, laid on my stomach, and bit mouthful after mouthful off of my dad's corpse. He wasn't easy to chew through, and it took a long time to tear pieces off, then swallow his flesh down into my stomach. And I put a little thought into my head. Was I not made of his blood to begin with? As they watched, they slowly quit laughing. Ultimately, the man I had bitten was in charge, and he said that I had been born a ghost, so I shouldn't remain in the human world. After that, he brought me back with him to Ghost Valley. Jotsushu leaned down, then placed a hand on the side of Wunkashing's face. Perhaps due to blood loss, the man's eyes were slightly unfocused, and his skin was freezing.
Yeah, I think it's done. I hope. Let me know, guys who might know if it's done before I put my hand down. Whew. Oh. Like, I had heard that he had like done some cannibalism like things in the books. Can't remember where or how that came to be. Probably someone commented it. But this is in a way worse than what I was expecting. I thought maybe, he just kind of like sunk so far into depravity at some point that was a thing that he did to assert power. But no. This is so much worse. Like this poor kid. Okay, great. Ugh.
Upon feeling warmth, he unconsciously tilted his head to nuzzle into his palm. I've been here for a full 20 years, he said breathlessly. For the first 12...
Oh yeah, no, it's much appreciated that they didn't show that. Though even if they wanted to, I don't know if censorship would have allowed it. But either way, I'm very happy about it.
I desperately survived, desperately climbed upwards, desperately, for the next 8, I had finally climbed to the top and prepared for my main event. You secretly aided Sinding, forced the hanging ghost into dire straits, baited him into stealing the key, tailed him, killed him, and then disposed of both his corpse and the key. Jotsushu picked up. This created the veneer that he had fled.
At least that makes sense now how everything is connected, because I wasn't sure if they would still connect things in more or less the same way that the show had.
Thus making Ghost Valley come out in full force to hunt him down. You watch Sunding and Lao Meng each harbor their own motives, watch them. In this world, Wunkashin cut him off. There is only one thing that can destroy evil spirits, and it's the human heart.
Interesting statement, but now that like the terror of you eating your father is past, probably shouldn't have said that. Sorry. What was I about to say? Now that that has passed, can we focus back on the fact that you're dying? Please? Like, you're pale? I think Joshu might have commented that he looked near death. Can we just... please?
Abruptly turned his head to the side and coughed like his lungs were splitting open. Inner breath turbid, the sensation of suffocation accordingly inundating him. Suddenly, a hand was pressed against the center of his back. and a soft current of internal force spread throughout his meridians and channels instantaneously, faintly clearing up his consciousness. Seeing him slowly pass his breath, Jotsushu instantly curbed his efforts. You're out of strength, but your wound is more serious in comparison. It needs to be wrapped up to staunch the bleeding, else I'll be too afraid to help you set your internal force into motion. Then he looked into Wunkexing's eyes. I'll ask you this. Do you want to live? The other watched him in silence for a very, very long time. Will you leave me? Smiling lightly, Jotsushu shook his head. Like his life depended on it,
These
Wunkexing clenched
two
his jaw,
ridiculous
grabbed
men.
his hand, and forcibly propped himself up. Live? Why wouldn't I want to live? Why couldn't I live? All those shameless, vile people of the world get to live, so why can't I? I have to. He could no longer easily get his breath back, body swaying as he panted nonstop. Jotsushu sighed, sealed up his main acupoints, then picked him up in his arms, going off the mountain.
Okay, so if that was that easy, why didn't you do it sooner? Like, we could have had this discussion before, not after he was fixed from being on the brink of death. Remember, it's just a story. It's gonna be okay. I know, but I wouldn't be me if I didn't get overly invested in fictional characters.
He brought the blood-covered man to the small town. It took no less than 2 days for Wunkexing to awaken, where he could barely manage to take in some food and drink. After a few more days, Jotsushu hired a carriage to bring them to Luoyang, but right before they set out, they happened to run into Gao Xiaolian and Zhang Chengling. The latter was still in shock. As soon as he saw him, he immediately threw himself at him and cried painfully, sobbing and hiccuping. Shifu, Brother Cao, he... Gao Xiaolian's eyes were red as well. Jotsushu sighed. I know, he gently said, and placed his palm on top of the other's head to soothe him. Immediately after that, Zhang Chengling bust out another sentence. Shifu, I killed someone too. I killed someone.
Did I forget that part, or was it done off screen? Because I remember him almost killing someone. Trying to kill someone and not succeeding.
Jotsushu's hand froze. Wunkexing, who was reclined inside the carriage, also shifted his gaze over, looking at the little devil in astonishment. Gao Xiaolian clenched her fists. I had my part in that too. Don't cry. That guy was a villain. He deserved to be killed. We got lost on Fengya Mountain, then came across a man dressed in gaudy clothes. After following him for a bit, we learned that he was actually the boss of the poisonous scorpions.
No way! No way, no way. No way, no. No, my dear Chengling did not accidentally kill one of the most dangerous people in the cultivation world. This is not the cultivation world, I'm sorry. But you know what I mean. I really hope that this isn't like gonna be revealed to not actually be him, but that would be hilarious. Oh, word. I mean, I don't think anyone doubts that I absolutely adore Chengling, but he just leveled up again. He's cool now. Indeed, he gets coolness sticker.
For some reason, though, his arm had been cut off, and he looked to have been hit with poisoned needles. Jotsushu looked pleased, while Wunkexing couldn't resist letting out a hushed laughter. After that, the guy seemed like he couldn't keep his scorpions
I'm
under
sorry,
control,
I'm just...
Zhang Chengling supplemented, and they fought each other. You two used the confusion to eliminate the scorpion?
Mm-hmm.
Wunkexing quietly asked. Zhang Chengling made a stalling noise, feeling that even if the other party had been a bad guy, his own act of using another's crisis was also very despicable. The
Oh,
man
bless
laughed out
him.
loud. This was what it was to have a guardian deity watching over you. Afterwards, Gao Xiaolian dried her tears and said farewell to them, heading back.
I think this just confirmed that Zhang Qingling, despite everything that he's been through, does indeed have some of the best luck of the entire novel. Chunling accidentally winning the battle. Yep. Chunling is our favorite strong dum dum. that is that is the best description. Yes. Oh my word.
For Gao Manor. After enduring all sorts of trials, the girl had grown up over the span of a night. Zhang Qingling
No.
went with Zhou Zishu and Wen Kexing to Luoyang, and after joining up with Lord Seventh and the Great Shaman, the ashes of Rong Xuan and Madame Rong were brought up Changming. Following a month of recuperation, the Great Shaman began to remove the nails from Zhou Zishu, reconnecting his meridians. Heavy snow fell from the heavens on Changming that day. Wen Kexing stood outside the room, seeming to be mentally calm, even as he heard cries coming from inside. Lord Seventh pat him on the shoulder all of a sudden. Don't worry, okay? If it was anyone else, there would be only 30% certainty. But it's Zishu. Nothing will go wrong. Wen Kexing turned his head.
Okay, I'm excited with this, but sorry. Yeah, no, he did. He did. Got all the luck.
To look at him. Lord Seventh smiled. Since he was able to bear with putting the nails in himself way back when, why would he be scared when they're pulled out? His succeeding words disintegrated, but a small smile was on his face, as if he was reminiscing about something. Lord Seventh appeared to have an odd charisma that made one stand by his side, then calm down in his wake. Even so, Wen Kexing's calm lasted only a short moment, after which he turned away and left. This pretty boy really does look like a Huli Jing, he thought to himself.
What
I
is
need to be
that?
on guard. This action completely mystified Lord Seventh himself. After being in total coma for 3
Oh,
months,
damn.
Zhou Zishu woke up at last. He felt like an entire set of heavy shackles had been unburdened from him, his entire body becoming lighter, sans his right hand that was being gripped tightly by someone who was apparently exhausted as he was leaning to the side for a doze.
Oh,
Zhou
that's cute.
Zishu was momentarily distracted, thinking of the events that had led to this point, just as if they were from a lifetime ago. In the end, however, he simply stared at their entwined hands for a while, smiling gently. Yesterday, he had died when he had gone to bed, then awoken as someone new the next. The years that had passed were for nothing other than awaiting someone like this, who could stay with him both morning and night, holding his hand.
Guys, I'm such a sap for things like that. Oh, that was the best. That just made me so happy. Okay, I know there's the extras, we'll get to them right away, but just, can I just live in this moment for a little bit? I love that. I love that so much. Oh, okay. It's fine. That was so cute. Chi's faith in his husband and BFF is great. It is the kind of faith you aspire for. Oh, that was so cute though. That was just perfect. That was a nice ending. And not dissimilar to the way that the like episode 37 ended. So I appreciate that they kind of kept the vibe going there as much as they could. Oh, that was so cute. That was wonderful. Okay. I kind of don't want to move on. I know there's more, but I'm like, but I don't. I'm scared it's gonna ruin the cuteness that we just experienced, and I would rather end it here. But also, I'm really too curious to not check what the other extras are about. So, oh goodness, what are your guys' thoughts while I pull up the first extra? So we have four extras, by the way. I'm gonna be doing all of them. So we're gonna stay here and finish this regardless of like how long it takes. I know that this chapter took a lot longer than it was supposed to because I was pausing a lot. But it was necessary. So
Far
okay, let's see. Um, the extras are more cute. Okay, that is promising. The crying extra. You don't want to mix the extras. Yes, the extras are short. It's okay. Okay, let us see how this goes. But that was yes, that was a good ending. I'm satisfied with that ending. I'm a little bit sorry that we didn't really get a follow up on Guxiang and Cao Weining, but maybe it'll be in the extras because I vaguely remember someone mentioning that there is kind of a hint towards it in the novel. Is the live buffering? Oh goodness. There's the love scene. Okay, but it's tame-ish. Okay, that's good. Cause like I don't wanna be tempting YouTube to do things. Let's just see about the buffering. Hmm. Okay, on this side it says it's fine, so I'm not sure. It doesn't seem like the issue is with YouTube. Let's see what OBS has to say. Hmm. Okay, OBS also seems relatively fine. Like there are some dropped frames, but it's not something that I can really fix, shall we say? Um. So as long as the audio is okay, then I'll continue regardless of the video being a little bit behind. Um. But yeah, I'm not sure. Um. Okay. Vivi, if you want to go ahead and remove any spoilers, it's you can do that. So I think it should be fine for now. Um, but yeah. Okay. So the buffering is fine now. Okay. Then we shall like immediately jump into the next chapter in case the buffering comes back.
Wanderers, Extra 1. On
Okay.
Changming. Changming Mountain was coated in snow the year round. Upon looking all around, everything would be a vast white, like misty clouds beneath the feet. In the environment was a couple of tiny thatched huts and one small courtyard, resembling a place that an immortal would live apart from the world. Lord Seventh was currently warming up wine.
So are
A
they
rich
just now like claiming Changmi Mountain as their own? Like they're living there permanently?
aroma faintly wafted out, then far away via the window, the spitting image of unfiltered wine with green foam and a little red clay stove. The man seemed to be able to live life in elegance and comfort, even if he had been reduced to living in a forest deep in the mountains. With the book in his hands, the great shaman sat beside him, and would occasionally be puzzled, then raise his head to ask some questions. Lord Seven's lowered eyes were staring at the tiny stove. He didn't even need to think about any of what was being asked, as the answers came naturally to him. Had he not been born into the prince estate, he would have been full of enough literature to examine his way to fame. Whilst the great shaman idly chatted with him, he went to clasp his hand. "Are you cold?" he whispered. Lord Seventh shook his head at that, drawing the stove closer. Gazing out the window, he suddenly smiled. "Take a look at this place. It could be described as having 1,000 mountains with no flying birds, and 10,000 paths with no human tracks. It's only been a few days, yet I can't even tell what night it is." The great shaman's heart jumped. "You like it here?" Lord Seventh side-eyed him with a grin. "If I said that I did, would you be able to accompany me in living here?" The
What,
other
guys?
considered this for a while, looking serious. "Luta is still young, but if you really do like it here, I'll go back and instruct him properly. Then, after a few years pass, I'll hand Nanjiang over to him, so that I can come live with you. How does that sound?"
No, that doesn't sound good. But is like obviously I haven't read the novel that's connected to their story. I don't know if I should be asking for spoilers, but is he like their adopted son or something? Because that would be
Taken
cool.
aback for a second, Lord Seventh then let out a laugh and lightly smacked him on the forehead. "You really are a dull club that takes everything seriously," he mumbled.
You
"Who
love
want
him,
to
it's
live in
clear.
this hellscape? The air's cold and the ground's frozen. Nanjiang's still fun, at least." Then lowering his head, he smiled. "It's ready to drink." He brought out wine cups, carefully poured 2 of them, handed one to the great shaman, and took one for himself. Putting it under his nose, he inhaled deeply, then narrowed his eyes. "As it goes, 1 boon covers for 100 uglinesses. Only those that still smell of alcohol after being boiled belong to the top grade. There is a saying, 3 cups, and I enter the great Tao, 1 dough, and I'm one with nature. There are 100 kinds of anxieties in the human world, and only this can solve them," as his speech was suddenly interrupted by a bunch of crashing and crunching noises. He sighed, his refined mood of drinking, as he recited poetry, immediately getting swept away, and took a sullen sip. "These 2 fleas never give it a rest all day long," he rebuked in a whisper. "I can tell that Jotsushu's just fine, so let's say our goodbyes in 2 days' time. My ears need to be at peace."
I don't even care what the context for that is. The context could be that they're just arguing way too much, or it could be of the more sensual natures, shall we say. Either way, it's so them. They're so ridiculous. Why do I love them so much? Oh, um. Oh. Oh, that's interesting. So he's chosen early on and has to. Something like a disciple son makes sense. Small spoiler. Okay. Fair enough. Like it more than Tinyaka. They're fighting for something. Okay.
Ling's exercise didn't normally make so much noise, so generally speaking, this overabundant, building-demolishing ruckus had to be from his 2 shufus exchanging blows. The great shaman had said that as long as Jotsushu was able to wake up, the most dangerous phase would have since passed. It was obvious how the man had endured a lot of toughening up. He had awoken feebly for a few days, but after no more than a third to a half a month, he was already able to get up. A few more days after that, he became a little more energetic, running and jumping, starting without stopping. It was a mystery as to who was provoking who in the pair, but in Lord Seven's words, "You can't clap with just one hand." They squabbled from morning till evening, then sat down nicely for dinner, which could also result in a quarrel that began with arguing, then went to pinching each other with chopsticks. Lord Seventh had found it interesting to watch at the beginning, but later got annoyed, refusing to eat with those two mandrills.
I just love that, like, they're so predictable at this point. Like, it's almost ritualistic. He's like, yes, so this will happen, and then this, and then they pinch each other with chopsticks, and then after that, it's this.
He got caught in the crossfire. Rather bewildered, Lord Seventh had to lament. Zishu used to be a very collected person. Why is...
Because he met
Sheesh. Getting
Wenkashin, that's
close to a
why.
cinnabar really does make you red, and getting close to ink really does make you black. The great shaman smiled a little. This is good, actually. The process of reconstructing one's meridians is acutely painful, and straightening them back out afterwards is also very difficult. It's extremely cold here, too. It wouldn't be easy for an ordinary person to return to free motion, but Manor Lord Joe is not only active, he's forcing his meridians to come apart. He will be a bit pained during this period, but it'll be good for him in the future. Wunkexing changed the direction of Jotsushu's shoulder with a palm, as if wanting to encircle his entire body in his arms. The other used that momentum to flip over one of his arms, and before he landed, he used a foot to lift up Wunkexing's chin, forcing him to draw a step back. After that, he flicked his fingers out like a gale, sneak attacking him. Wunkexing inadvertently got hit, and his knees went soft, nearly putting him into a one-knee kneel. However, the second he was falling, he rolled to the side and grabbed Jotsushu's calf, making them both tumble into a ball.
Oh my
Apart
word.
from ice,
It
there was
sounds so
snow, and
inelegant.
Lord Seventh, the Great Shaman, and Zhang Tongling were all staying far away from them, so the ground was clear and not that filthy. After rolling a few full turns, Wunkexing pinned Jotsushu underneath him with a willy grin, his hands placed on either side of the other's head. Give up yet? Jotsushu was in preliminary recovery from his serious injury, so he wasn't as strong as he had been before. Panting slightly, that was a cheap trick. Wunkexing cozied up to him, lowering his
Of
voice
course
with a
he did.
smile. You were clearly the one to be underhanded first. Hey, Lawen, Wunkexing hummed as he licked his neck.
Wait, what?
I'm saying...
Hold on. Just casually throwing that in there as if it doesn't ruin my sanity. Yeah, I kind of got that impression as well. Yeah. It does. It definitely feels like it, especially the way they were describing the hand movements and things. I distinctly got that fighting style impression.
Jotsushu said a few words with seeming carelessness, but Wunkexing didn't quite catch them, somewhat puzzled. In that split second of thought, he got elbowed in the chest, letting out a grunt, and was instantly lifted off. The sky whirled around as both his arms got pinned behind his back, following which he was pressed onto the ground. Jotsushu imitated the hoodlum look the other had just had, blowing into his ear with a chuckle. How about this? Do you give up yet? It took Wunkexing a good deal of effort to turn his head and see him. Are you trying to tie me up, Ashu? Jotsushu raised his brows.
I mean, at this point, I wouldn't put nothing past him.
That's a good idea. He went and tapped on the other's acupoints, seeing
Oh
that
my
he was
word.
motionless for the time being. He relaxed slightly, sat to the side, then wiped off his face. My little wife, your husband got a head full of sweat just from restraining you,
Oh my
he said
word.
ruefully. A hand suddenly reached out and pressed against his forehead. All he saw was the should-have-been-frozen Wunkexing slowly getting up. Oh? Let me see. You really are sweating. Don't catch a cold. You actually altered your acupoints?
What?
Under his shock,
Just casually?
Jotsushu had already escaped over a jang away from him, on guard as he watched him. Wunkexing threw him a flirty look. I can do even more than that. Afterwards,
Oh my word.
the two pounced yet again, continuing their earth-shaking brawl. As such, the great shaman had actually misinterpreted them a little. The reason why they fought all day was for that meridian stuff, but another cause stemmed from an issue that needed to be settled urgently.
Mm-hmm.
The outcome was not yet determined.
Oh
The
my
top
word, guys. I don't know if I've just watched way too many BLs for my own sanity. But a part of my brain is like, are they trying to determine who gets to top? I don't know if I'm going to be able to handle that if that's the case. We shall see. Anyway, like the way they were fighting at some point, because they had they had Wenkashing kind of like kicking at Joshu's knee and making him almost like fall to the ground, and then Joshu almost did that to Wenkashing as well. And I was like, are you guys trying to get the other person to propose with all this kneeling going on? But no, that was just me projecting.
and the bottom, not for certain, and both of them had fires in their hearts that could only be vented as they quibbled. At first, Jiang Qingling
Hold on,
had
what
been
word?
earnest in running.
Huh? Where am I now? The reason why they had fought all day was for the meridian stuff, but another cause stemmed from the issue that needed to be settled urgently. The outcome was not yet determined. The top and the bottom not for certain. Okay, so yes. Wait, no, you paused right in them. Okay, I'm sorry. My bad.
Spectate them.
Let's
Both of
go
them had
back.
Fires in their
We shall listen to this properly.
that needed to be settled urgently. The outcome was not yet determined. The top and the bottom not for certain, and both of them had fires in their hearts that could only be vented as they quibbled. At first, Jiang Qingling had been earnest in running over to spectate them, thinking about what he could learn. Later on, he had discovered that their fights were too bitter, and he could only learn moves such as Black Tiger digs out the heart, Monkey steals the peach, and Universe goes topsy-turvy, which really had no reference value. Lamenting the fact that both of these experts had returned to their primal states, he henceforth practiced his own martial arts style by move. The youth was confused though. His Shifu forever thought his style was hard to look at, but wasn't his own rolling about the ground with Senior Wen absolutely graceless? Two masters had been thoroughly reduced to two ruffians.
Jiang Chengling, just don't think about it too deeply. I don't want you to be like, what would even be the word, like, disillusioned before your time.
And beyond their intentions, accidentally ended up impeding their students' progress with their conduct. Only after Zhou Zishu took his daily dose of medicine each evening would they call a truce. The great shaman bestowed medicine based on the person. For someone that was frail-bodied and wouldn't be able to take it, his prescription would be light and easy. But for Zhou Zishu, who would be fine no matter what torment came at him, he gave nothing but powerful medicine. After taking it, the latter would feel terrible all over for a short while, clenching his teeth as he withstood it, and then after the effect had passed, he would always be soaked in sweat.
I mean, to be fair, he kind of went through the same thing while the nails were still in his body, so I think he's unfortunately kind of used to it.
A wash, then a rest, he would recuperate enough energy to continue hopping all over the place the very next day. Once Zhou Zishu had taken his medicine for the final time, the great shaman and Lord Seventh said farewell and left the day after. Even though Nanjiang had always been honest in folk, and the shamanette Lu Ta was overseeing it, they had been abroad for too long. Seeing them off, it was then the first day that Jotsushu didn't have to bear with drinking that medicine that was akin to death by 1,000 cuts, causing that night to be bizarrely peaceful. Munkishin carried a jug of wine into the room, then shook it in front of Jotsushu's face. The other
He
took
just
it
knows
with
how
no
to seduce
formality in
him.
the least. He meandered over to stick himself to Jotsushu's side, eyes shining brightly as he stared at his profile. Getting stared at so blatantly, Jotsushu drank down a mouthful of wine. What are you looking at? Munkishin grinned. Aren't you afraid that I've drugged that? With what kind of drug? What kind?
This man, like they're different. Okay, they're both different.
Do you think? Jotsushu shot him a look, sneering in mockery. You wouldn't dare to slip me an aphrodisiac. Aren't you afraid that my wild nature would break out and put a handle on you? Munkishin frowned, feigning upset. Right, that really is a bit of a worry. Propping up his chin, he looked Jotsushu up and down, then sighed and shook his head. You should just let me make the move. Otherwise, I'm thinking that if it keeps going down like this, we'll both be practicing monks.
Ah!
The other glanced at him. Why wouldn't it be you letting me make the move? Wunkishing's perverted hand slowly reached up and touched the side of his waist, ambiguously rubbing up and down. I'd let you try out all sorts of moves, but... His wrist got snatched by Jotsushu. They contained their strength so as not to tear the roof off the room, then began wrangling again. Zhang Chengling passed them as he was returning from his practice, finding...
Can this poor kid just remain oblivious? I think it's safer that way. Snarking at each other is the foreplay. That should be as he should.
this surprising sight unsurprising, since he knew that they were duking it out again. He thought to himself, why can't they just spend time together properly? Every single day they bicker like children. Seeing how very offbeat they were, he thus sighed at the vicissitudes of his own life, then silently turned to go back to his own room. Following 300 rounds, neither of the two's strength could keep holding up, so they took a break. Wunkishing snatched the wine pot, took a couple of big swigs of it, then exhaled. After sprawling out on his back atop the bed, he waved his hand. No more. I don't have the energy today. Jotsushu sighed in relief, like he had been waiting for those words to come out of this great one. He then sat on the edge of the bed and gave him a little push inwards. Scoot over. Wunkishing shifted in, facing the bed curtains above, as if suddenly distracted. Ashu, after this bout, you will be fully recovered, he said, after a long time of staring blankly. Will you go with me for a trip down the mountain?
Oh, they're going on a
Jotsushu shut his
honeymoon.
eyes in rest,
Sort of.
giving a at that. I'm pretty much done with it right now. I can go. What are you going to do? Wunkishing was silent. The other waited for a long while. Feeling this a bit strange, he opened his eyes and tilted his head, gazing straight at him. The man still looked like his mind was wandering somewhere beyond the sky. What is it? Wunkishing's eyelids trembled, and he managed out a smile. It's nothing. Back then, my parents' corpses were aired out in the wilderness, and they didn't even get a monument. I've been unfilial. For over 20 years, I've never gone back to take a look. I should probably. Jotsushu sighed, then slowly reached his arm out to loop around his waist. Wunkishing obediently turned on his side, putting one hand on the other's back. His fingers were placed on Jotsushu's shoulder blades, and he unconsciously traced over their outlines, burying...
Oh, I can never look at the shoulder blade thing the same way again. That went sad very quickly. Lol, not a honeymoon? No, seems like a meeting the dead parents kind of thing instead, which is depressing.
his face into his shoulders. Xiang too, he said muffled. While you were recovering in town, I went back, found her and Xiao Cao, and put them to rest in the ground together. Thank you, Wunkashing answered hazily, his next words nearly inaudible as his arms that gathered Jotsushu close seemed to tighten. For half my life I've been a solitary person. I had thought that I'd have Xiang, but she's gone. That time you were in a coma, I wasn't as confident as the great shaman. I thought that if you... Jotsushu suddenly realized that his shoulder was apparently wet. He couldn't resist bowing his head, but Wunkashing waved his hand to extinguish the lights, choking up slightly. Don't look at me. Having never been one to comfort another, Jotsushu could only allow him to hold him tight. Slowly, Wunkashing's hands began to wander on him.
Of course.
He was uneasy, but the man didn't even have a tiny bit of joking overtone. All he did was constantly call his name, as if highly uncertain, bringing with it a slight terror and desperation. Jotsushu sighed on the inside, thinking, screw it, he's so pitiful. I'll let him, just this once. He used enormous self-restraint to relax. For the first time in his entire life, he was handing himself over to someone else without any defenses. Here...
Okay. I have to say, I didn't think that the first time would be while Wunkashing was crying. Okay, maybe I'm just a sucker for things like this, but I do feel like I don't know how to put it. It fits that it's Joshi. Like, I feel like it's more important for his character arc for him to be the one that allows himself to be vulnerable in that way, because he has been the one who's been holding back the most so far. So I feel like this this feels like the right way for things to go.
Tangling when their heads were rubbing together, the man
On a bit
only
more of
muttered
a
to him
serious
with
note.
a bit of entreaty, Ashu, don't ever leave me. Even in this utterly frigid land, there were threads of warmth. They set themselves free from beneath the bed curtains, then slowly spread outwards, as if they could let a flower bloom. At daybreak the next morning, Jotsushu was in a rare light sleep.
Oh.
Upon opening his eyes to see the one in his arms, Wunkashing had a faint, perfectly content smile. As soon as he moved, Jotsushu came to. He felt like every single thing on his body was off, and that he was being firmly embraced by a certain someone. He opened his mouth in want to swear at him, but Wunkashing had long been guarded against this action of his. In that split second the other had opened his eyes, he stifled his self-satisfied grin, then gazed deeply into his eyes with a complicated expression, looking like a million emotions were within him. And Jotsushu...
Really? He's like, no, I don't want this perfect morning to be ruined, so I'm gonna look like this meant so much to me. Which I think it did, but still, like, the fact that he's like, no, consciously, like, give him the eyes, and then... so that he doesn't yell at me.
The nagger that hadn't yet spoken caught sight of his red-rimmed eyes. He harshly swallowed everything back down, not knowing what he ought to say. He had no choice but to stiffly turn his back to him. If you're getting up, do it by yourself. Don't bug me, he mumbled. Wunkashing immediately hugged him from behind, laid down again, and put his fake pitiable expression away when the other couldn't see. Elated, he thought of how a soft heart was way more enticing than a soft waist. However, once his short moment of happiness was done, his worries started up again. Furtively opening his eyes to peek at the one beside him, he thought, but every time I want to do this from now on, will I have to put on a crying act? That seems like a bit too much of a tragedy.
Oh my word, of course that would be just much suffering. So much suffering. Oh my word, of course that would be the thing that he's worried about. I just and the thing is I can't even really fault him that much because like Joshu gives him that thing to be worried about. It's not like he just, will give in the next time. It's never gonna be easy with him, I don't think. Okay, just give me 1 second. Just wanna. Okay. Oh, that was so ridiculous, but it fits. It's them. I can't imagine it being any other way, unfortunately. Oh my word. Imperfectly perfect together indeed. Oh goodness. Okay, that was extra one. So we still have what, three extras left? I'm not sure. But yeah, we're taking a little bit of time, because I can't not pause with these, unfortunately. Like, look at that title, a beloved, a confidant. Oh my word. Okay. Okay, yeah, so three more extras left. I'm sorry this is taking so long. I'm hoping that my camera battery will survive this.
Faraway Wanderers, Extra 2. A beloved, a confidant. People in Jianghu were making a terrible fuss, but who had actually seen the lapis armor's key before? Wen Kexing had. He recalled that the key that had initiated countless bloody tempests had actually been only a kun long, thin as a cicada's wing, and weighed practically nothing in the hand, like some kind of oddly shaped, beaded flower that a young lady would wear in her hair. What a terrible flower! Atop Fengya Mountain, fierce wind blew at one.
Okay, so am I yeah, prayers for the camera battery indeed. Um so am I correct in assuming that this is like way before? This is before he decides to leave the Ghost Valley even.
Kexing's long robes. His palm was bruising. The hanging ghost had just died by his hand.
Okay, never
His
mind.
corpse had already fallen beneath the cliffs, gone, and from that point on, there would be even more people hiding bodies there. Mortal humans cannot enter this land of evil spirits at will? Very well. I, in a shell of mortality, will nudge this spirit world over for you to take a look. He opened his hand and flung. The lightweight key had turned into bits of dust in his palm, falling into the infinite depths of the cliffs below. Xiang, let's go. He situated himself into orientation of a watching bystander, then brought his little girl with him to hike through Jianghu for over 3 months.
Please tell me we're gonna get like Wen Kexing seeing Joshu for the first time, like things from his perspective.
Waiting for various people to make their appearances. Within those months, he went from lands of luxuriant forests and growing bamboo to passing through seas of yellow sand and desert, to drinking a sip of sunny days' snow, then to the fair hands of this brothel beauty, filling his lungs with the cosmetic fragrance of pear flowers. Afterwards, in Jiangnan, he came across a vagrant that was sunbathing as he leaned against the corner of a wall. Vagrants were nothing strange. What was strange was that he noticed a faint light hung in the eyes and condensed on the lashes of the man. then felt like something had stuck into his heart, as if he had witnessed the rise of peace and crush of defeat therein. Love and hatred acquired over generations, gratitude and vengeance gained since time immemorial. All that had been pressing heavily down upon his chest was lightened a tad beyond his control. All my life of being down and out, I returned to the inside of the goblet, he suddenly recited. What? Asyan was a dumb girl that didn't understand dog crap. She couldn't even comprehend the words of humans clearly, to say nothing of any sorrowful past happenings or plaintive anxieties of the present year. He had no choice but to gloss it over with a smile. Against expectations, Asyan leaned full out the window, looked down, and then crisply called out on the next beat. Young master, look at that guy. If you say he's a beggar, he doesn't have any worn bowl next to him for that. If you say he's not, he's been sitting there stupidly all morning without doing anything other than grin like an idiot. Is he an idiot? In that moment,
Oh, Xiang.
Xing was a teeny bit angered, as if a corner of his thoughts had been pried into. As if this stupid girl had thrown a rock into nice mirror-like waters, causing ripples to go off in all directions. He settled himself, however, and gave a collected reply. He's sunbathing. He noticed that the beggar had listened in on them, actually raising his head to glance at him. They were on a balcony. The street was wide, and the sounds of humans were akin to a boiling pot. With that sort of hearing strength, Wunkashing stroked the tips of his chopsticks.
I mean, at least, like, obviously there was the instant, like, attraction or something akin to that. But I appreciate that there's more to it, like the fact that when Cushing could tell that he could hear, which obviously meant that there was more to this man than met the eye, and that curiosity probably played a part in when Cushing persisting and getting to know Joshu. Oopsie, sorry.
His recent languidness vanished. Those martial arts were not weak. Below the surface of Jiangnan, an undercurrent was fiercely swelling, and it was already a season of turmoil. Those that came and went from every major sect, hailed as famous, were not few. Which road had this one come from? That night, Wunkashing brought Ashiang with him to think up of every possible method for tailing the vagrant, but unexpectedly, he got to see a good show in a worn-out hall that was leaking air from all four of its sides. In today's martial circle, people with that insight, that skill, and that presence could be counted on both hands. Which one was he? In truth, Wunkashing himself couldn't say for certain whether he had followed him out of caution or simply pure curiosity. Some people who flaunted themselves as being lonely at the top for long, upon abruptly meeting someone who caught their eye, would typically be unable to resist chasing them down to thoroughly scrutinize them.
Fair
Yet,
enough.
he had never thought that this chase would inextricably entangle him for more than half a lifespan. From that rundown hall in the middle of nowhere, a kid that only knew how to cry was escorted all the way to Lake Tai. Zhao Jing, the Chushan swordsman of the lake, was his #1 lifetime enemy. Emotions running all over the place inside this illustration, he opposed the one who had been bought off for 2 silver coins all day long. At times, Wunkashing would ponder, had he not stirred up this reservoir of disastrous water, would Jiang Chengling have been able to remain in obscurity, relying on his father's protection to live his life? Even though Jianghu folk would inevitably sigh at the mention of this tiger of a father having a dog of a son, that tiger father would at least still be around. With both parents, his family would have been thriving financially. What would it matter if he lived through life behind closed doors? Wunkashing's chest held demons, shame, and a heart that was infinitely frozen. Hence, he was obliged to not betray any of his complex emotions. pestering the vagabond Ashu regardless of consequences. As for the man's origin, Wunkexing already had a guess, but he still couldn't understand him in any way. Why did someone whose authority had reached such a high extent lower himself to advancing and retreating as suitable? The endless carnage he had experienced was like one big dream, where he floated through life like so. How could he still harbor the cultivated heart of a child? At the time they were both together in the Yellow Springs, Wunkexing couldn't resist feeling out for the lapis armor piece on the imp's body, but ended up bumping
Yeah,
against a flexible nail. For writers, the pressure
that's what he was doing. It was completely motivated by him just trying to be efficient and thorough. It had nothing to do with his attraction to Ashu. This suddenly got a bit heavy though.
was treasured. For warriors, might. What ties did he have with that foreign, discordant object? He knew that this sickly devil, completely sallow in complexion, and nothing much to look at, had instantly and firmly been branded onto the soft flesh of his heart. Following that, even the poisonous scorpions got mixed in with this. Heroes and cowards of all walks of life had come to put on their own performances, occupying the small stage to its brim. Ashu and he escorted Jiang Chengling back to those upright factions that had mouths full of traditional virtues, and partway through he watched the man give that dumb kid pointers on martial arts. For a moment he couldn't resist wanting to show off his skill, also striking out a move or two. He didn't expect that Ashu, from one sword move that had been morphed beyond recognition, would be able to readily expose the history of the Quming sword. The heavens and the earth were manifest, and Jianghu was so vast. Who would remember its wanderers that were as fleeting as shooting stars?
Okay, maybe I'm just a sucker for a good title drop, but I live for every single time they mention wanderers in the novel.
Only he could. For such a short period of time, the world was their hut. Wunkexing found a tiny space that was 3 chi wide, where he could peacefully sit down with another like so, and reminisce together about an old married couple, who, as far as the majority of folks in this world were concerned, had no significance. He listened to the man's mild voice amidst the wind and insects' chirps. If someone has only themselves their whole life, on guard against everyone aside from themselves at all times, in all places, never being close to anyone, never feeling anything for anyone, only loving themselves, wouldn't that be miserable? Being a bad guy is too painful. Wunkexing had a sort of impulse at that time, wanting to pour out all of the suffering he'd had in his life, dump out the grievances that filled his chest for his unstated confidant to see. However, he never had a way to do so, only
Goodness.
able to divulge a couple of phrases by means of a disharmonious, roving, Qinhui-like tale. Too painful, he thought. Being a bad guy is too painful. Why couldn't you and I have met each other 10 years earlier, Ashu? Why is it that when I did meet you, I was already something both human and ghost, yet not either, and you were already near death from injury? Why in this world do homes and happiness always get destroyed, and friends and confidants always meet up late? Heroes will get to the ends of their roads, beauties will lose their charms as they age. If someone wants to live according to their own hearts, how difficult should that be? It might have started from there, where an inner demon-like obsession suddenly birthed in his heart. He thought, why can I not follow my own desires this one time? Why can I not keep him with me? Inside Puppet Manor, when availing himself of the man's head.
Okay, sorry, I have a lot of thoughts, but I also just kind of want to listen right now, which I know is probably not very entertaining, but I need to hear all of this and then we shall We shall say what I'm thinking afterwards. Sorry.
Injury, he was momentarily lost in madness, wanting to press a hand into his chi-high acupoint, thinking, I just need a bit, even if it hurts some, I just need a bit. Then I can keep Ashu in the palm of my hand for a long, long time.
Oh, goodness.
That path of accumulated callousness was nevertheless defeated by the strike of that slightly distressed phrase. Other people don't understand, but do you not understand either?
Oh, I mean, that phrase killed me in the show as well.
How can I not understand? Of all the living things he had seen in his life, Ashu alone weighed heavily on the innermost part of his heart. He conceded to the damned drifter, conceding until it gouged out his heart and eroded his bones, until he couldn't bear to disobey him in the slightest bit. This was exactly what it felt like to be human. This was. The world's villains, unparalleled in contemptibility, were like carps crossing the river. There were also uncommon folks similar in greatness to Longshi. That year at the Puppet Manor had almost been the most calm and happy one he'd had.
It had been a year? I didn't realize they were there for that long. Damn.
In his 30 years of life, he, Ashu, and that brat Jiang Shengling would kill fowl, stew meat, boil mutton, and slaughter cows, divvying up a bowl of raw rural wine. He took Ashu's hand, which would easily get cold after his injury, into his arms to warm it, then felt like his own heart was melting too. He believed himself to be a little intoxicated somehow. Ashu's mouth was unkind, but his heart was unbearably soft. Ashu was a grown man, yet he was still too afraid to eat walnuts. Ashu was a coifer that drank both good and inferior wine down. Ashu was...
Oh my word, he is such a sap for Joshu, and I'm living for every single second of it. Like, this man is literally just out here waxing poetics about his soulmates, and I love it. This is why we like priest writing. Yes, indeed. Oh, it's so beautiful and so cute.
A confidant he had the luck to come across in his life, a close friend, a beloved. Yet he ended up having to awaken from his dream. There were still many disturbances happening in Jianghu. The grisly storm he had set into motion himself had never once stopped for a break, and Green Bamboo Ridge was in dangerous turmoil. Many parties had since arrived, while a counterweight had yet to return to its position. As he was the smooth-talking outsider Lao Wen, he was also the ghost master, whose red clothes had been dyed with blood. Those two people, who should have been completely irrelevant to each other, had been forcefully pinned into the same body due to deep enmity. How bizarre was that? He finally got to cut down his foes, one by one, in his last battle, but he also lost his little girl in purple. Axiang, Gugu's taking revenge for you. If you have a next life, you have to be reborn into a good family with parents to protect and support you, and siblings to love and cherish you. When the time comes for your 10 li of dowry, you can pick your affinity with your fool of a boy, Tsawaning back up, where you'll be a perfect match. Don't have anything to do with the plagues of the righteous and the demonic ever again. When he faced the scorpions by his lonesome, he was covered in blood and sweat, looking towards the empty sky. He reminisced on the recompense of his own immense hatred, an indescribable exhaustion within him. He thought, my grudge is appeased. Death would be becoming. I may as well just give up, right? But somebody wasn't going to let death end his troubles.
Yeah.
When Ashu came with Baiyi's swordlight, like an elegant nobleman of scholardom, the emotions in Wenkuxing's heart could not be clearly explained to outsiders. What decades-long grudge, what silent suffering, what lapis armor, all of that was quickly cast to the back of his mind. Aside from the vagrant in front of him, he could no longer see anything else. Captivated in such an instant, he thought,
What? I'm such a sucker for things
as
like
long as
this.
he's willing to give me the tiniest bit of affection, from this point on, every day he lives, I will live with him. If he passes on, I will hold a bundle of dry grass, douse myself in kerosene, and burn up together with him,
That's a bit
turning to
extreme
ash,
when Cushing, but I'm
becoming
not
one with the earth
surprised,
in the same spot.
unfortunately.
As long as you are willing, as long as you want me, can I make an extravagant request for a minute to be with you until we grow the white hairs of age?
Oh, what? Why is this like such a big love confession? It's so beautiful. Oh my word. Like, just when I think it can't get better, it just makes it so much better. And I have to say, like, I'm not necessarily someone who thinks, oh, a entire novel from the other character's perspective is the way to go. But an extra like this is the perfect balance between like just not having any insight into the other person's perspective or getting an entire book. Like, this was just such a nice overview of why when Cushing made some of the decisions that he made and what he was feeling at key points throughout all this. It was so good. I love that. Oh my word. Oh goodness. But I'm feeling a little bit fragile, I have to say. Like, it just, if I were reading this on my own, probably I would be taking breaks in between these chapters because it's getting me very emotional and it feels very like I'm feeling a bit lethargic. 'Cause it's like now we're going on to the next one and it just keeps on mounting. The emotions just keep going higher and higher. Oh goodness. Okay. How are you guys doing? Because I'm loving it, but also wow. And I think the next one, if I had to guess, would probably be like a small chapter about Xiang and Cao Wenning, which is just gonna murder me some more. Oh, last life, this
Faraway
like
Wanderers,
life. Oh my word. Okay.
Extra 3. Last life, this life. Someone who had died would look back on their own lives and feel no worries.
Enjoying it. It's good. Oh, okay. Wow.
Their 3 Hun and 7 Po souls would then vanish by over half, and they would follow soul hook envoys in a fog down Yellow Spring Road, forgetting as they walked it, not knowing what night it even was by the time they arrived at the Bridge of Helplessness. After that, they would pick up that bowl of forgetting brew, and their previous lives would be completely gone. Those who had done good would have their virtuous merits discussed. Those who had done evil would go to the underworld. If they deserved rebirth or transmigration, they would re-enter the reincarnation cycle. After death, everything was settled, and the consciousness would be as clean as white snow, starting over anew. Therefore, whenever someone shut their eyes, the people that still lived would always do all they could to satisfy whatever desires they left unfinished, to save them the extra hardship as they traveled Yellow Spring Road. Some would still have unresolved obsessions from prior to death, and their souls would follow them in their walk, unwilling, all for the sake of material gains from the mortal plane. They would then be made to bathe in the yellow springs, and after getting over themselves, the ferryman would pull up to see them off to rebirth.
Getting over themselves. That sounds a bit crass. I've read this a few times, but yes, this is lovely writing. Yeah, it really is.
The living's events were not for the dead to worry about. Yellow Spring Road was very long. The length it would take one to forget was exactly how long it would be. The only thing that couldn't be forgotten was love. After walking
Oh,
4,444 jang, they could still look back and line up in a row beneath the bridge of helplessness. Those waiting for someone else would sometimes wait a day or two, sometimes a decade or two, or sometimes an entire mortal lifespan. Someone would wait for another to come, but that someone would be so out of it they couldn't remember them any longer. Occasionally, there would be some that could, but they would be one aged person with one young one. And even though they shouldn't recognize each other, they would end up clasping each other's hands with tears in their eyes, all while a ghost messenger would prompt them from nearby. You two, the time has come. Get going. In love of the mortal world, there was always a fondness for saying some oaths of eternal love, but those were only terms that would last no more than a few decades, no more than one life and death cycle of rebirth, and then it would be, you are you and I am me. How was that not laughable? These words were what Cao Ning was hearing the ghost messenger say to Meng Po as he crouched beside the bridge of helplessness. The messenger had stated that his name in life had been the surname Hu, given Jia, and he was a passionate person. Cao Ning listened to him bother Meng Po with his non-stop chatter while she ignored him, ladling soup at her own pace. The bridge never stopped metamorphosing. Legend stated that how much forgetting brew was drunk down corresponded to how wide the bridge would be. One cup forgot an age, dust returning to dust, earth to earth. Messenger Hu Jia babbled for half the day, but never saw Meng Po raise her head, so he got in close to converse with Cao Ning. Kid, why aren't you drinking the soup? Waiting for someone? Mortals were insipid in love and luck, and all of them were middling. It was rare to have one that was so clear-headed, where even an immortal ghost of the netherworld would be willing to talk more to him. This was the first time Cao Ning was speaking with the messenger, and he was more or less startled from the favor. Haha, yes, you are... Hu Jia had absolutely no intention of having an exchange with him. He was probably just getting bored from having nothing to do, and wanted to find someone to dump words onto. There was another that waited here before, he straight up cut him off. And once he started, he was waiting for 300 years. Cao Ning was taken aback. 300 years? Who has lived for so many years? He trembled out.
Was it Yebai's person whose name I can't remember? Rongshui, or Rongshuan's father? I'm not sure.
The one he was waiting for didn't have the surname Ye, right? Oi, why do you care about what his surname is?
I'm
Surname's just
accepting
like
it
your
as canon.
code. If someone's surname is Huang or Di for emperor in one life, after jumping into that spring of rebirth,
Lord Seventh. So, So is he... Okay, I'm confused. We shall see afterwards.
her next life might have the surname Ju or Go for pig and dog. Who even knows? Hu Jia waved his hand, then pointed at the three-life rock. He sat there, waiting for 300 years. Then he went back to the place he started, where he first got to meet his someone. But, well, you know how that went. How? The other asked, egging him on. He chose another, better match. Hujia sighed. Right then, Mungpo finally lifted her head to glance at him. Messenger Hu, mind your words, she said expressionlessly. Hujia gave a, yeah, fine. This guy was somewhere in the ranks of emperors, princes, and generals and ministers. I have to obey the law of karma and can't talk about it. Who are you waiting for, young fellow? I'm waiting for my wife. Hujia didn't feel that to be strange at all. How old was she when you died? 17, Sawening answered honestly.
Oh, that
17.
was so
Back when
young.
I died, I too had a 17-year-old wife at home. What a shame. Hujia shook his head. That time was too long ago, and he could no longer clearly remember how that wife had looked.
That's
I
sad.
advise you not to wait. She'll keep growing up through her life, and by the time she comes down, she'll be an old lady in her 70s. She'll have
Unfortunately,
long forgotten
not.
a man from her teens. I've seen a lot of people before that come waiting and leave waiting, only for a scene of expectation and then heartbreak. You should quit dwelling on things as soon as possible and pour yourself a vat of mungpo soup. You'll clean forget any sort of wives or concubines you had. Mungpo raised her head again, still expressionless. Messenger Hu, mind your words. Hujia shut up, dejected, but saw Cao Weining start to smile. That'd be just fine, and I look forward to it. It would be best if she can't remember a bit of what I look like anymore. Once she passes before me, bright-eyed, worry-free, and happy, and I see her move on, I'll have no worries myself. You don't feel unhappy?
I don't know why I'm surprised. Like, why should I be surprised that Cao Ning was one of the best boys in life and continues to be one of the best boys in death as well? Oh, goodness. Apologies if I've now messed up my makeup, but it is what it is. When even the lady says, mind your words, she's actually swearing at the dude. But the translate. Okay, the translator censored it.
Hujia wondered. Cao Weining looked at him strangely. What would I be unhappy about? He countered. That's my wife, not my enemy. How would seeing her be okay make me unhappy? The other
Oh,
was mute
word.
for a short moment, smiling. You're taking this well. Am I? Cao Weining said, with quite some embarrassment, scratching his head. I've had no other advantages in my life than being able to take nothing to heart. Well, there is just one thing. I was beaten to death by my own Shifu. I'm afraid that she's taken it hard and is never going to let him go. What sort of scandalous thing did you do for him to beat you to death? It's probably because of that little thing about the righteous and the demonic being unable to coexist.
Just
He said
slipping
that
that
my
in
wife
there.
was a villain of Ghost Valley, and I insisted on being by her. In a fit of anger that his dignity was put on the spot, he killed me. His tone was relaxed to the point that it was like he was talking about someone else, and it was hard to tell, just from listening, that he was reminiscing about his own manner of death.
Yeah.
Hujia became intrigued, then crouched next to him. You don't hold any hatred?
Yeah, that's
Cao Weining
amazing.
pointed at a soul hook envoy that was floating over with a ghost. On the road, I heard that gentleman recite, dust returns to dust, earth returns to earth. I then felt that no matter how big my grievances are, there's nothing to hate. I'm already at rest in the ground, so what power would hatred have? Wouldn't I just be making things difficult for myself?
Oh my word.
Hujia looked up to see He Wuchang floating past with his black, blank face, and whispered out a complaint. Hey, don't listen to them. Our underworldly soul-hook envoys only ever say one sentence, and they've said it for who knows how many years, never once changing it.
What, so do you
Mung
want him to be upset? Like, you want to take away his peace of mind? Or are you just not used to having to handle someone who's accepted his own death?
Poe's gaze was a fixed glare once more. Messenger Hu, mind your words, she said blankly for the third time. Hu Jia sighed, pointing at her as he spoke quietly to Cao Weining. See, that also goes for our Meng Po. I've gone back and forth the bridge of helplessness for centuries, and each time I do, she says that phrase, Messenger Hu, mind your words. This netherworld is a real lonesome place. Cao Weining smiled as he listened to the lonely Mr. Messenger babble in his ear. He gazed out at the traveled road, thinking, if A Xiang became an old lady, what would she look like? She'd definitely be one with plenty of energy, lively and bold. All of a sudden, he stood up, eyes in wide open circles. He saw that in an area not far away, a familiar girl was currently following a soul-hook envoy over with a skip in her step. While she walked, she ceaselessly surrounded the envoy with questions, who was concentrating with their head down as they walked,
Of course she
completely
did.
ignoring her. Getting pressed so urgently, they could only say, dust returns to dust, earth returns to earth. Cao Weining opened his mouth to call out, A Xiang. Gu Xiang stopped in her tracks, then inclined her head to look over. For a moment, she was stunned. At first, it seemed like she wanted to cry, but she ended up stifling it all, transforming it into a face that was smiling wide. She dove at him like a little bird. Brother Cao, I knew you would
Oh,
be waiting for
goodness.
me. As if he hadn't seen her for a lifetime already, he held her tight, but then got to thinking again.
I
With
don't
how
know
she looks,
why I
she
wasn't
didn't become an
prepared.
old lady. Doesn't that mean she died early? After that,
Yeah,
he
try
became
like a
worried and
few minutes
upset,
after you,
hundreds
basically.
of feelings crisscrossing inside him. His tears started to come down, falling into the water of the yellow springs, making circle after circle of ripples, startling even the ferryman. Hu Jia shut his mouth, watching the mutually embracing couple with a distant smile. Only this meeting at the head of the bridge appeared to stretch on forever, until the heavens were withered and the earth was aged. Another ghost messenger on the bridge called out, You two, the time has come. Get going. Like a pendulum utterly devoted to its duty, that same sentence alone had come out of their mouth year after year. Gu Xiang lifted her head out of Cao Weining's embrace, glaring viciously at the messenger. What are you so impatient for, you freaking soul-calling over there? The one on the bridge froze, thinking to himself, isn't that exactly what I'm doing? Hu Jia just started laughing. What a bold little lady, he commented. That's a dauntless wife you have, young fellow.
Indeed.
Cao Weining sounded happy and polite, despite his tears. Forgive my shamelessness. Standing up, Hu Jia pointed at the bridge. All right, be on your way. Don't miss the time of your rebirth. If you're even a tiny moment off, it'll be hard to say whether your vast riches will turn into you being roadside beggars. If your karmic links aren't used up, you can continue as you are in the next life. With that, he led them up the bridge, standing before Meng Po and her soup. Gu Xiang hesitated. If we drink this, we'll forget everything. Can we just not, Grandma? Meng Po looked at her with a pretty blank face, silently shaking her head. Little miss, if you don't drink the soup, you'll be a cow or a horse in your next life, Hu Jia said. Drink up. Gu Xiang's eyes quickly went red again. Lowering her head, she was unwilling to move regardless of any persuasion. Hu Jia couldn't take this, going to speak to Meng Po. Look at that. It'd be fine to make things a little smoother, yeah? This isn't easy. In this place, thousands and thousands of years pass. Yet it's not likely that we'll ever see a pair of lovers that can find love no matter what. It really is. Messenger who? Yes, yes, I'll mind my words. He hurriedly picked up. She hesitated for a moment, then suddenly took out 2 lengths of red string from her sleeves, spread them out in her hand, and presented them to Gu Xiang. The latter was caught off guard. Take them quick, young miss, Hu Jia hurriedly piped up from the side. Elder Meng Po is showing you mercy. This is a fateful opportunity that even several lifetimes wouldn't be able to cultivate. Take them and tie them on your wrists. It'll save you from wondering if you'll even meet up in your next life. Gu Xiang quickly took the red
Makes me so
strings,
happy.
then clumsily tied them to Cao Weining's and her own wrists. Following that, they held hands, drank down the forgetting brew together, then re-entered the cycle of reincarnation. Behind them, the faraway voice of that soul-hook envoy was heard. Dust returns to dust, earth returns to earth. There was also Hu Jia's musing. Ask the world what exactly love is. Even Meng Po's broadened her horizons. Messenger Hu, mind your words. 15 years later, in Luoyang City, the young lady of Landlord Li's home conducted her coming-of-age ceremony. Landlord Li's long-sworn brother.
Oh my word, okay, like say that 3 times fast. That sounds like a tongue twister to me.
Visited with his only son. One reason was to give birthday congratulations, and the other was to propose a marriage. Back when this pair of children were in swaddling clothes, they had been brought up together, and upon playing with them, the adults had discovered that of the 2 little tykes, one had a red mark on their left hand, and one had a red mark on their right hand. How could that not be a karmic tie produced in the womb? A betrothal had consequently been drawn up. It was now the season of green plums. A lad rode on a bamboo horse.
That just made me so happy. Like I'm still, there's a part of me that will always be sad over the fact that they weren't allowed to find happiness in the lives that they shared with Joshushu and Wenkasheng. But at least they did still get happiness in some form. Sorry, it started raining, so if you can hear that, I apologize. I'm hoping it's not too much of a issue. But that was a lot. They're adorable together, indeed. They remain adorable until the very end. Bai Jianghu? Oh goodness, okay. Let's see what the final extra holds for us. I mean, they were killed off here and in the drama. I wish they had not died. Case in point. It feels unnecessarily sad.
Faraway Wanderers, Extra 4, Bai Yi Jianghu. Rumor had it that when Celestials reached the end of their calculated lifespans, they would undergo 5 decays. Once accustomed to staying within the boundaries of bliss, they would be reluctant to part with it, taking in the poison of aversion. According to the 6 harmonies mental cultivation, once a celestial ate and drank of the human world's smoke and fire, they would present a waning appearance, their hairs turning white, chi gradually weakening, and body gradually declining. No longer would they prosper, nearing their own coffin. Yebai was feeling as much right about now. His hair was getting whiter by the day, as if someone had a brush and was painting it somewhere unseen, bit by bit. When casually gathered up, it would come out in large chunks too. Sometimes he would suffer delirium and forget where he had just been, and where he was going.
This is gonna be painful, isn't it? Yabai is ending. I love Yabai. I also love Yabai, and I don't know if I'm ready for this. Okay, let's keep going.
His energy was lacking. Sometimes he wouldn't be able to fall asleep at night, and sometimes he would sleep, then find it hard to open his eyes when the sun was already high in the sky the next day. Even so, he felt delighted, free, and without a smidgen of aversion. What the six harmonies had claimed was absolute nonsense. The root cause of this was probably the fact that he had never taken himself as a celestial, but felt himself to be the living dead.
Mm.
In his view, once he was off Changming, he was the living dead that had now opened his eyes to come alive, even if it was only for a few brief years, even if he would once again walk the path of mortality, where one was born, grew old, got sick, and died. He ate a lot of food on the daily. At times, he would traverse very long distances just to try out a purportedly delectable snack from some area.
He's living the
Ancients
life.
told that wanting food and sex was human nature. He was too old to be in the mood for sex, so he threw his entire being into food. He was not a picky eater.
I- that was a funny sentence that I was not expecting. Um, at least he will no longer be missing his beloved. Yeah, I always felt bad about that. Couldn't agree more.
Everything and enjoying everything, where even a bowl of tofu, randomly grabbed by the proprietress of a roadside pub, could be finally savored by him for a good long while. To someone who had eaten cold food and snow water for a century, the sourness, sweetness, bitterness, and spiciness of the world were all precious things. He had paid visits to people that knew of what had happened 30 years ago. After going down every possible route, he had finally found the unremarkable graves of Rongshuan and Yue Feng'er, took back the dust-covered ancient blade of the dragon's back, then put their bones together, cremated them, placed them in a jar, and entrusted another with delivering them to Changming.
Oh,
He
okay.
had been wanting to obstruct those that were
Because I
fighting
had wondered where the ashes had suddenly come from.
over opening up the arsenal, but after seeing a farce firsthand, he felt fatigued again. What did their lives and deaths have to do with him? Thinking himself to be just an old man on the brink of death, he had nothing to be concerned about while he lived, and nothing to do the day long. Thus, he assumed his duty to be traveling all north and south of the great river, and eating all the food of the realm. Perhaps he would go until the day he could no longer move, and where he ended up would simply be the place he would die.
I need a modern AU where he's just allowed to be a grumpy grandpa who's also running a like restaurant. I don't know. I just need him to have a happy ending.
By the by, he missed Rong Changqing every once in a while. Rong Changqing, his sole friend of this world, had already been dead for 30 years.
Yeah.
In spite of that, Ye Bai could still recall, without a single detail lost, how the other used to look, how he looked when young and proud, how he looked when teenaged and whimsical, and even how he looked when a babbling toddler. Proud and wild during his life, Ye Bai refused to remember people of insignificance. The lone, vivid recollection he'd had since his birth pertained to that man. Rong Changqing had grown up with him since they were young. Unlike Ye Bai, who went looking for fights the moment he was born, he had been a very charming man, whose calls to others had been akin to cleanses in a cool breeze. He had liked fine wine, famed swords, pretty people, and even literature. Anyone in the world could have been his friend, given that they gave him a cup of alcohol. But unfortunately,
Sounds like
he'd had
Beijing.
only one genuine friend, Ye Bai, who, when not practicing, would only taunt others. Ghost Hand, Rong Changqing's fame-starting work, had been the Great Famine Sword. At the time, he had been merely a young nobody. Without a single care, he had casually handed the blade that others would later call the general amongst swords off to an old wandering beggar, who had given him a pot of monkey wine and a book of secret techniques.
Oh my word.
The wine he had brought back to share with Ye Bai, while the book had contained the surviving sections of what following generations would call the Six Harmonies.
Okay, I know we still have a bit to go. I just need a moment to breathe. Food blog. Yeah. I feel like the Arsenal didn't have a big part in the book as it did in the series. The Arsenal was just a plot device in the book. They didn't even open it. Yeah, I have thoughts on that. This is one of the things they changed besides extending parts for Prince Jin and Scorpion King. I have to say, in terms of like audience satisfaction, I can get why they decided to focus a little bit more on the Arsenal, because the novel is very much kind of like focused on Wen Kexing and Joshu's journey in self-discovery and like just them growing to love each other as soulmates. But I think for a show it makes sense that there should be something a little bit more driving the plot than just their relationship, especially because they can't even fully flesh out the relationship because it's non-heterosexual. So it makes sense that they had to find other things to kind of like fill in the major focus points. And for me that makes sense then why they decided to not have Wen Kexing just get rid of the key and the arsenal not be able to be opened, because it would be highly unsatisfying if you don't have the novel as like a reference point and you just have the series and the main thing that the entire series focuses on never even like gets opened. So they also gave a character to Shunsha and Lao Gao, whereas they just died in the books. Yeah, and I'm actually quite sad when I was quite sad when I realized that Shunsha just died quite early on in the book as well. And if you look at how long the book is, because Shunshan's character was one of the ones that surprised me the most. Like, I did not think I would like that man by the end of the show, and the fact that I did was such a nice surprise, and I really enjoyed and appreciated his character growth. So the fact that that wasn't part of the book is a bit sad for me. But it's nice as well because it didn't feel like. Sorry, I have something in my eye now. What I wanted to say is like it didn't feel out of place. Like none of the changes that they made felt out of place. Everything still felt very cohesive to the novel. There were points where I couldn't remember if something had happened in the novel as well, because things actually flowed quite well between what was happening in the novel versus what was happening on the show. Okay, sorry, I don't know why my eye is now bugging out, but anyway.
Later on, Ye Bai would hear that by great coincidence, Great Famine, which had wandered across Jianghu, had fallen into the hands of the Jiang orphan. He suddenly thought this a little absurd, as if their people and these events were vaguely connected into one circle. Death begot death, age begot age. This became a segment of misery not explained to completion, with no one left behind to do so fully. Rong Changqing had been a young one, of those who practiced martial arts, which one could ever resist the magic of being one with the heavens. His aptitude hadn't been enough though. At times, when Yebai thought back on it, he felt that the thing was actually a demonic book with all sorts of snares inside it, luring humans into walking step by step down it until they were damned without reprieve. Maybe only one person out of millions would be chosen by it, then become its new successor, making them the spitting image of something that was neither human nor ghost. Rong Changqing, a heaven-sent genius, had relied on his own strength to futilely complete the 6 harmonies, resulting in a chi deviation. Back then, Yebai had been out touring in the midst of looking at Changming Mountain, thinking that if it was unfrequented and very suited for his occasional solitary seclusion. The villagers below the mountain had just spread worsening hearsay about an ancient monk. Madame Rong had still been a not yet married girl, yet she had discarded her status to carry Rong Changqing up the mountain on her back, pleading with Yebai to save him.
Oh wow, that's
The two had
awesome.
exhausted their minds for methods, with absolutely no results. In the end, out of a lack of option, Yebai had resolved to swap their fates by transferring Rong Changqing's power to himself. Surprisingly, when it came to him, he had actually come to fully grasp the wondrous 6 harmonies method by some karmic fluke. So many people had successively asked for such a thing, yet hadn't received it. This heavenly pie, stinking of dog crap, had instead landed upon the head of someone who embraced the will to die. Rong Changqing had been a sentimental one. He had decided to repay his 2 benefactors by marrying Madame Rong and keeping Yebai company all his life on Changming. He had been a fool. He'd had no idea that Madame Rong didn't want to keep another ice-cold man in such an ice-cold ghostland company her whole life. Nor did he have any idea that Yebai didn't want him to marry her. He had been a fool. Exchanging a feigned sword for a demonic book had been one foolish thing, and being engrossed in that book had been a second foolish thing. But in truth, those 2 previous things put together were not as foolish as his 3rd foolish thing. Had there ever been anything more ridiculous than that in the world? Yes. Something even more ridiculous had been Rong Changqing's son, Rongshuan. He had been a child as foolish as his old man, and a martial moron, just as determined as his shifu, Yebai. He had been a combination of everybody's shortcomings, thus making his life destined for tragedy. He hadn't understood that the thing martial artists searched for all their lives had been in the hands of his shifu and papa. Why had the both of them been so secretive? He had heard them say it was an extremely dangerous object, but young people did not view danger the same as their elders.
Yeah, that's true.
In anyone's youthful era, they would inevitably believe themselves to be different from others. What someone else couldn't do, they could, and what killed someone else wouldn't kill them. Rongshuan had run away bearing Dragon's back, which Yebai had passed on to him himself. Rong Changqing and Madame Rong then had a big row. The girl that had formerly been talented, gorgeous, aspirant, steadfast, and faithful had turned into an aged and despairing woman from decades inside the frosted loneliness.
I feel
She had
sad
differed
for her
from them.
though.
She had been a flower that needed excitement, needed sunlight and human presence. Carnage of 30 years. The first step had been to run away, like it was predestiny. Perhaps it had started from Rongshuan, perhaps from
sad.
Rong Changqing. Perhaps it had started even earlier from that wandering old beggar and that general great famine, so quietly created. Perhaps it had simply been a circle, duplicated over and over again in people's minds, continued down generations. 30 years later, Wen Kexing had come to grab onto a tiny hint, set to task, and then turn everything onto its head. But that was all in the past. In the afternoon of some random day, Ye Bai, who had just finished the last morsel of his broth in a tiny tavern, suddenly had an apathetic thought. Those alive and those dead were all in the past. Those situated inside the playing field each had their respective griefs, like him, like Madame Rong, like Wen Kexing, like Zhou Zishu, like Zhao Jing, and even like Gu Xiang and Cao Weining. They all had attempted to jump out. Ye Bai had wanted to jump out of that curse of being one with the heavens. Madame Rong had
I mean,
wanted
Wen
to jump
Kexing
out
and
of the
Joshu
Iceland
kind
that
of
was Changming.
managed to
Wen
do that.
Kexing had wanted to jump out of being an evil spirit and return to the human world. Zhou Zishu had wanted to jump out of Tianchuang and be free. Zhao Jing had wanted to jump out of the rules of all of Jianghu, look down upon everyone from upon a high, and grasp the universe in his hand.
Yeah, that's a
Gu
bit
Xiang
much.
and Cao Weining had wanted to jump out of the world's deep-seated prejudices to be together, standing alone as they cast everything away. They conflicted, contested, schemed to exhaustion, and risked their lives. Just like an abyss, some jumped over and got out, while some didn't make it, falling to their deaths.
Yeah.
And that abyss had a name. It was Jianghu.
Damn. Okay. I wonder who the old beggar was. I feel like I should know, but I'm drawing blank. I have to admit, like, I really appreciated extra 3 and 4, so the extra that involved Gu Xiang and Cao Wening and this extra, but I would have preferred if they'd put these two, so have extra 3 and 4 be extra 1 and 2, and then end off with extra 1 and 2, so that we could end off on a happy note instead of this very melancholic vibe that has me near tears. Congrats on finishing your first novel read along. Thank you. And thank you, like a quick shout out and massive thank you to Vivi, who has been the one supplying all the audio that you guys have been listening to. So thank you guys so much for joining me on this. I hope it was entertaining. What were your guys' thoughts? Because I'm just like, it was so good. But as I said, I kind of wish we had ended on maybe Wen Kexing's thoughts about how all this came to be. Because this, I don't know, even though I feel like the way that Gu Xiang and Cao Weining's endings ended, and the way that Ye Bai kind of found peace, I feel like it fits and it works. But it's so sad that I didn't want to end with that. So I don't know. Oh goodness. This was a lot. I'm feeling very emotional, so I'm probably gonna go cry in a corner once the live is done. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I especially enjoyed this last live. It was just the perfect accumulation of everything that we had read up until now. I feel like it was a very good ending. Yeah, that makes sense, but also just it's not necessary to be that technical about it. They could have just left me with my happy ending. I would have been fine with it. Oh no, I missed it. Yes, unfortunately, we're just finishing up. But obviously, this will be available for replay if you would like. But like it usually immediately goes up for replay after I finish the live. And also, don't worry, we're going to be doing more read alongs. So I have been wondering because I kind of want to do just like a very chill read along of some of the mangas that I've started on Tuesday, Valentine's Day, because I am a lonely soul. And I won't be having any like dates or anything like that. So I was like, might as well read about somebody else's love lives. Thank you for hosting this. It was a pleasure. It was very fun. It's insane to think it's done. But yeah, thank you guys so much for humoring me, for coming along. It was a lot of fun just being able to discuss it with everyone and kind of like freaking out about the same things together. So yeah, especially this was my favorite live, I have to say. Like, this had all the good bits. It was so good. It was just so good. So yeah. I hope you guys have an amazing week. Yeah, let me know what your guys' thoughts are, like, with regards to everything in the comments if you have any more thoughts to be had. And otherwise, I'll see you guys again next time. 再见。